Greetings and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Executive Editor of the Center Square Newswire service. Joining me today is the Center Square's Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief, Casey Harper. We are recording this on Friday, June 9th. Casey, Republican lawmakers this week stepped up their criticism of President Joe Biden's department heads, Secretary of the Department of Interior Deb Haaland, and her questionable family connections to groups that lobby the department and support certain causes that the Department of the Interior is over. Just summarize this story for us. What's going on here?
Right. In a more perfect world, we wouldn't have to know much about the Department of the Interior. The average person, it's not normally one of the top agencies that people are familiar with. It's not Treasury, it's not IRS or DOJ that we're kind of monitoring for more politicization or something like that. In this case, it's Department of Interior. Now, why Department of Interior is important is because they oversee a lot of the drilling on federal lands. And we've seen, gas prices hit a record high during the Biden administration. He's really shut down a lot of drilling and pipeline development, pushing hard toward electric vehicles and that kind of thing. So there's a lot more scrutiny on the Interior Department and what they're up to. And it turns out, at least according to these allegations and this investigation that Republican lawmakers are digging into, is that Secretary Haaland's family, and she herself really has some connections to radical environmental groups, but also with some lobbying and maybe financial connections there too. So before she was the DOI secretary, she was involved with Pueblo Action Alliance, PAA, which is a group, it's an environmental group based in New Mexico. They're kind of a social justice group that does a lot of protest advocacy. You see these groups sometimes if you live in, especially in these oil and gas states, that will do different kinds of protests on sites or on pipelines. There's also, it kind of intersects with Native American lands, sometimes sacred Native American lands that might be the site of development. So that's kind of the landscape or the world that they're working in. First off, it seems that her daughter has been working for that group, employed by them officially for a few years now, and that she actually came to Capitol Hill to lobby members of Congress on legislation that would prohibit lease sales for oil and gas development on federal land. So the daughter of the Biden administration official in charge of leasing on oil and gas leases on federal land is actively lobbying lawmakers to prevent those very leases. So it's not like she just happens to be lobbying on some unrelated agricultural or foreign policy issue, as sometimes DC families are well connected and do this. She is explicitly lobbying on the issue that her mother works on. So it's hard to imagine that she wouldn't be empowered to do so by her mother's position, right? Whether she's explicitly bringing that up or not. In the same way that, people say that, how did Hunter Biden get so many open doors to him? It's not because he was, the smartest, most eloquent man in town. It was because of, his father's connections, right? So this is what Republicans are upset about, but it really goes in this backdrop, Dan, of what is the future of oil and gas domestic production in the U.S., especially if Biden gets elected again and we're pushing, I've written a lot about how Biden is pushing within, next 5 or 10 years to have most Americans driving electric vehicles. Is this really going to happen this quickly, or is this just mounting into a failed energy prices disaster?
You reached out to the department for comment. They declined, but Republicans are saying that there's a real potential for a conflict of interest in here. But what are the potential ramifications? I mean, what happens next? They can criticize her and the department all they want, but I mean, is there a potential impeachment coming, or what are the next steps? Do you know? Impeachment
is probably pretty far down the road. I think what they would want to do is use their kind of investigatory powers to get more hard evidence beyond what they have now. If they can, right now they have a lot of frustration in the oil and gas industry. They have more pressure on the Biden administration. Other things I've been reading have said that Biden doesn't want to change up his cabinet positions right now. He doesn't want to show instability. He wants to project stability heading into the next election. So I don't think he's eager to be replacing a lot of cabinet heads. But if they can use this investigation to get more damning evidence of things maybe that the daughter has done, that the husband, has done, or that Haaland herself has done, might be able to pressure Biden to removing her. They could tie her up in enough investigations where she becomes kind of politically toxic for Biden. I think that's probably the most likely play that they have. Of course, if there's something more illicit, illegal going on, then they're going to push hard to get Haaland removed for that. But I think they're kind of in the opening steps of this investigation. We're not sure if they're going to be able to find more in this regard right now.
Listeners can keep up with this story and all of Casey's great reporting at thecentersquare.com. For Casey Harper, I'm Dan McCaleb. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe.